What is going on, community? What is going on, people of Earth? I am TJ, aka Flash by Night, and it's been a while since we did this, but I came up with an idea, I pitched it, people were interested, I made a promise, and
I'm a man of my word.
So I want to talk about the most sympathetic figure in Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers so far. And I'm not sure whose name you think I'm going to call, but it's probably not the name you're thinking about. I want to talk about Starscream. Yes, I feel like right now, and especially in the future, we're going to find out that Starscream himself is the most sympathetic figure in Transformers from Image Skybound. If you're familiar with Daniel Warren Johnson, you know how good he can write, but you also know that he puts the emotion in almost everything he does. And after reading issue number 19, I finally saw what was really going on in the Transformers universe. And despite the bias we have from decades and decades of him being slimy and despicable and underhanded, this version of Starscream is the most sympathetic figure in Transformers today. But in order to get to this conclusion, we have to tell our story out of chronological order. In fact, we're going to tell our story from the most recent issue, issue number 19, back to issue number 1. You see, issue number 19 is somewhat of an origin story for Megatron himself. He gets taken from one of Cybertron's moon bases and taken to the planet of the Sharkticons for these trials. But many trials, hundreds, where he gets beaten. He fights Sharkticons and other beings on this planet. Sometimes he wins, sometimes he loses, sometimes he gets ripped apart, head, arm, chest flying everywhere. Then they put him back together and they do it all over again. And I want to say there were 300, 400, maybe 500 of these trials where he has to fight for his life. But the trials were for him to prove himself worthy for this additional power he was about to receive. Because after all the trials, we get this being whose name I don't remember, or I don't remember if they gave us a name, but he has this dark matrix that's the opposite of the matrix of leadership. And what this matrix does is provide Megatron with additional power and additional alt mode, which ends up being a gun, and this ultimate power of coercion and influence. And whoever dares to pick Megatron up in this gun form basically becomes corrupted, becomes Megatron's slave. And when you flip to the next page, the person you see next holding Megatron in this form is Starscream. But I guess now you ask, why does Starscream have Megatron in this form? For that, we're going to flip back to Transformers issue number 13, right before the war on Cybertron really kicked off. You see, before the war on Cybertron, before there were even Autobots and Decepticons formally, before Starscream's name was even Starscream, he hung out with two friends, one of which I forgot his name also, but I put it on the screen, and also Jetfire. And while his one friend wanted to join the Decepticon cause because he thought the cause was just, he and Jetfire were scientists, and Jetfire was going to use Starscream's map to traverse the universe and go make scientific discoveries. And it's here, before the war started, we see Jetfire take off and see him for the last time, which is important. We'll get to that. And before you know it, the war on Cybertron is at our doorstep. Starscream's friend has joined the Decepticons, but he ends up being killed. And of course the first person that Starscream sees is Optimus Prime. But Starscream still isn't trying to join the fight until he's convinced by Megatron that Megatron will help him get vengeance for his friend. So he decides to join what seems like this just Decepticon cause. And then Megatron transforms, jumps into Starscream's hands, and this is when Starscream is corrupted, and this is when he actually becomes Starscream. Up until now, he wasn't violent, He didn't like war. He didn't want to fight anybody. He wanted to be a scientist. But he was corrupted by Megatron and made to go against his own will and join the war. And again, I know it's 40 years plus of Starscream being Starscream, and I know he doesn't necessarily garner a lot of sympathy, but in reality, in this story, Starscream really has nothing to do with the way he ended up with the Decepticons and in the war. But here's the doozy. Here is where the sympathy comes in. I don't know how many of you have really true friends you can count on through thick and thin, friends that will follow you to the ends of the earth or whatever planet you're inhabiting. But Starscream had two of those right before the war started. One of his friends naively joined the Decepticons, and his other friend has no clue that a war is going on. That friend is Jetfire. The first time we see him is in Void Rivals #1, before we even get the Transformers book. And we find out that he's been depowered on some other planet for who knows how many hundreds of years. But the next time we see Jetfire, which is the kicker, is on the Ark, where the Transformers, both Decepticon and Autobot, have crash landed on Earth and been depowered. And like most tellings of the Transformers story, eventually Teletran 1 wakes up at least one Transformer, and that one is Starscream. And at the same time, Jetfire finds his way to Earth, to the Ark, having no clue that a war happened and having no clue that his best friend, who is not in control of his faculties, is waiting on him. And I know Starscream shot Bumblebee in the face before Bumblebee could ever get activated. And I know how people feel about Bumblebee, but that's not what we want to talk about. But what we need to talk about is when an enraged Starscream sees Jetfire, he points to one of the downed Autobots and says that symbol is a symbol of war. And Jetfire tells Starscream that he's crazy. And Starscream says, yes, he is. He is out of his mind. And again, not his fault. But then he turns his blaster on Jetfire and tries to take Jetfire out. It looks like he does. We find out in later issues that Jetfire is still operational, but nowhere close to what he used to be. So now, through no fault of his own, through no control of his own, Starscream has lost both of his best friends to this war between the Decepticons and the Autobots. And sure, at this time, Starscream's actually the leader of the Decepticons through some chicanery on the way to Earth. But this is a corrupted Starscream that had his innocence and his agency stolen from him by Megatron and the powers of this dark matrix. And these factors are why I believe Starscream is the most sympathetic figure in Transformers today. Now, if you look at the cover for issue number 20, it looks like Starscream is in trouble at the hands of Megatron, and I feel like Daniel Warren Johnson is heading the way that I'm describing, making Starscream this sympathetic figure that even the most hardened Autobot fan is going to feel for. But those are just my short thoughts on Starscream and the sympathy I think he should garner in this book. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you saw or heard something you liked. If you enjoyed yourself, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want to keep up with me, keeping up with Transformers, having sympathy for Starscream, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and please feel free to leave comments. But as we always do at this time, love yourself, love others, and I will be back in a flash.